name's Jacob, I'm 20 years old, I'm originally from Birmingham and I study at university in Manchester and I identify as non-binary, queer, romantic, asexual. So growing up, media representation of LGBT people was pretty non-existent in my life. I didn't really see myself in any of the TV characters fully. A really good example was my favourite TV show as a child, which was the Sarah Jane Adventures, which is a Doctor Who spin-off. It's a really good show, you should all watch it. The last few years I found out that one of the main characters, Sarah Jane's son Luke, was actually going to come out as gay in one of the episodes, and looking back I would have been around 13 when that was due to happen, and so that would have been like a really good moment for me to sort of see somebody in the media that sort of represents how I was feeling, because at the time I didn't understand any of my feelings. Everything was a big blur in my head. I didn't know the word LGBT, I didn't know the word gay. I was just confused, and it took me a good 2 more years or so before I actually understood that. If that character had come out, it would have been such a help for me with figuring out my identity sooner and being less stressed about it, because it's a stressful time. Love, Simon is a film that came out in 2018 and it's a positive gay love story, which is the first one a big Hollywood studio has made ever. It's the first time it's ever been done, and it really made me remember the Sarah Jane Adventures, because looking back, a sort of film like this would have been such a big help for me growing up, like seeing positive representation of how I was feeling on the big screen, and just seeing the response from around the world just filled me with joy because of how positive the story was and how relatable it was to our identities. So when I first came into contact with other LGBT young people, it was on a Stonewall Youth Campaigners program, which was essentially where I discovered the actual terminology behind my gender identity. Before that, I had absolutely no idea of the extended LGBT acronym and all of that stuff, so I learnt a heck of a lot on that program. And it was the first time I'd come into contact with other LGBT people ever, to my knowledge. It was a pretty big deal for me, because before then I'd wanted to go to youth groups in Birmingham, I'd looked them up, but they're all either too far away or too hard to get in contact with, and I was nervous, and they weren't very good at calming those nerves, because I guess they were either really busy or they were underfunded or something, so there was just nowhere for me to go to meet other LGBT young people. And so I looked at Birmingham Pride and considered going a few times, but for somebody with anxiety like me, who just doesn't like people and crowds and loud music, it just wasn't the sort of environment I could see myself enjoying. So I didn't go to Birmingham Pride for years, and then the year I did end up going, I was a little bit stressed and I didn't particularly enjoy it that much. Not because it was Pride, but because there was too many people and too many loud noises and stuff. So that really impacted my exposure to other LGBT young people, because that's a really important thing, is having people and friends who actually get what you're going through. So as a kid, I was very anxious. I barely spoke at all at school. I was constantly worried about being seen as different, and the questioning of my sexuality and gender identity was all on top of that, and I just craved to not be different. And I remember one instance really clearly. I was in an RE lesson in school, and the teacher basically asked the class whether we knew of anybody in our year group who was gay. And so that really sort of set off a chain of emotions in me that went on for many years. I was so paranoid about being found out, or about just anybody assuming that I was gay. And that lesson where they were all debating who might be gay was just the most upsetting and scary experiences, because I was like, any second they're just going to point at me and then they're going to out me and it's going to be horrible. Chances are they probably didn't know, looking back, but it was awful on the inside. I just felt so scared and alone, And the teacher just didn't seem very good at moderating the situation. I mean, what kind of teacher would ask that realistically? I just didn't want that to be the only thing people saw about me. And come to later now in life, I feel a lot more confident in being different. I'm not really bothered whether people see me as different or not. I just like to be me. But yeah, that experience really shook my entire school life, to the point where I was scared of just looking at another guy in the corridors and just showing any kind of anything towards other people, just because I was scared that that would impact me in some way and out me, essentially. When I was growing up, I felt really, really alone. There was no media representation, I had no role models that represented who I was, and I didn't have any friends that identified in a similar way to me. So the first time I met other LGBT people, it was like Christmas Day, presents everywhere, and I just related to so many people in so many different ways, and it helped me to understand my gender identity. Before then, I didn't actually have a clue that half of the feelings I was feeling were nothing to do with sexuality, they were to do with gender identity. And so meeting other non-binary people and seeing how well they're doing and talking to them about how they identify, that was really the sort of turning point when my head sort of made sense all of a sudden. And it's through meeting people who are thriving that I managed to actually understand my own gender identity a lot better than I did previously. And I just wish I could have done that a lot sooner. And the LGBT community as a whole, ever since then, has just been the best. That's why I want to work in community activities in the future, because it is such a great community, and it has its issues. All communities have their issues, but working in this community and being part of it is just the most special and wonderful thing, and they're the most accepting people that I could ever ask for. I guess a negative experience I experience a lot at the moment is being misgendered and facing sort of transphobia in the community towards my gender identity. Being non-binary, sometimes people can get very, I don't know, there's probably a word for it, but they just don't seem to get it and they don't want to get it. It just makes me feel really sad, and I want to scream. So when I came out, it was on New Year's Day. I decided to write my mum a note to tell her originally that I was gay, and I was 16 at the time. I'd been thinking about doing that for about 6 months, and eventually I managed to get the confidence. I wrote it down and I gave her the note. She read it, and the first thing she said to me was, "Are you sure?" And that really shook me, because I was 16 and I was really very sure at the time that that was how I identify. There was so much emotion going into that leading up to coming out that probably didn't need to be there, because I knew that she loved me for whoever I am. And it was just a case of me worrying about nothing, because she's been wonderful ever since. Even when I came out as non-binary, slightly different because it's gender identity, and there's a lot of changes that come with that, like using different pronouns, sometimes a different name if you're coming out as trans, and stuff like that. But she's been wonderful throughout it all, and she's very supportive. So a question that gets asked to me a lot is, why do you not feel like you're a man or a female? And I think that's a really tough question to answer as a non-binary person, because it's like, well, I don't really know, it's just how I feel. There isn't like a set answer that I'll use every time. Answers I've used before is, it's just how I feel, or it's just not me, and stuff like that. There's not really a set answer, because it's just my identity, and I wish people could already know that that's a thing. And that's why I started to not come out to people, because sometimes that's just easier. If you're not going to see a person again, sometimes I just don't bother coming out, and that really hurts me on the inside, because I really want to come out and be true to myself, but at the same time it's exhausting having to continually tell people how to address you and how to respect your identity. I think the turning point in my acceptance of myself was when I realised that everybody is different. Like, there is nobody who is the same, and you can look at every single person in the world and see somebody different. And I just wanted to be myself, and realizing that really helped me accept my identity, because it allowed me to just wear what I wanted to wear, speak how I normally speak, and be confident in myself. Because before then I was so anxious and so scared that I just didn't speak to anyone, because I was worried about the way that I spoke, how I sounded, how I looked, every single aspect of my life. And realizing that everybody's different and that's okay is what sort of pushed me to be able to actually be my authentic self and actually celebrate who I am and be the happiest that I've ever been. So my advice to my younger self would be that things are going to be tough in the years to come. I'm not going to pretend that things aren't hard, but what I want you to always remember is that the best you is the real you, and whatever life throws at you, you're going to be absolutely fine, and one day you're going to achieve all your dreams, and it's going to be the best time ever. It's just going to be a bit of a journey getting there, but the journey's always the best bit.